Hey guys, Ben here and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about Smallville, and we're also going to be talking about a new series from the writers of Supergirl and Smallville. So if you do go on to enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like and a comment and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos later this year. Okay, so we've talked about Smallville quite a lot recently. There was some recent news about, the animated sequel show that they're trying to do. We talked about that quite a bit. Earlier this week, we talked about the Justice League spin-off that was mentioned by the show's original creator, or he was supposed to be the creator, Stephen DeKnight, who directed and wrote some episodes in Smallville. And so we talked about that. But now we're going to talk about something a little bit different. So this was actually prompted from those videos and from, some recent developments to do with these Smallville projects. And so Krypton site basically decided to go ahead and put together a kind of article that goes over, the spin-offs that didn't happen that maybe some of you haven't heard of. And yes, this isn't like breaking news or anything, but I just think it's very interesting that the Justice League show wasn't the first attempt at a Justice League spin-off from Smallville. So we're going to get into it, and I think it's going to offer something a little bit new that maybe some of you haven't heard of. Yes, if you're a Smallville OG, like Craig from Krypton site, you're going to know all about this, but I know a lot of you guys are more recent Smallville fans, like watching after the show ended, or maybe you joined like mid-Smallville, and maybe you missed some of this. So we're going to get into it because I think some of you guys have been liking the Smallville content. I've been enjoying recording it and talking about a show that has obviously gone by, but it's still living on. The fans are still active. So this is what the Krypton site article had to say. So the Justice episode, the spin-off that was supposed to be for a Justice League Smallville series, has recently been discussed in several places on the internet. And what wasn't really talked about in that post is that this wasn't the only time that a Justice League-like spin-off from Smallville had been proposed. So the most commonly known possibility aside from Justice, and we're talking about the Justice episode in Smallville here, has been spoken about on record by the Smallville creators. One place that this proposal was talked about was in an interview with author/journalist Ed Gross in his Voices from Krypton magazine that was published in 2006, so we're talking a long time ago, guys, like early days. And so in the story relayed by Alfred, one of the showrunners of Smallville, in the magazine, he and Miles had pitched a Lois Lane series in 2000 before they even came on for Smallville. Instead, of course, they found out that they could pitch Smallville, and the rest was history. But 5 years later, Warner Brothers contacted the producers and asked them about the Lois Lane idea again, since by this point the world of Smallville already had a Lois Lane in Erica Durance. So there you have it. That is them talking about how they got actually contacted by Warner Brothers about their original Lois Lane series that they pitched back in 2000 that originally didn't get picked up before they came on to Smallville, and they found out that they could pitch Smallville, so they just kind of forgot about that show, I guess. But Warner Bros. Didn't forget about it. With the success of Smallville, they were like, how can we capitalize on this? So let's go on to see what they had to say next. So this is a quote: "We thought we couldn't do the original idea that we were going to do 5 years earlier," the showrunner explained, "as the original Lois Lane had an Ally McBeal meets Nancy Drew type show in which she would solve Night Stalker-like cases." So it would be kind of like a teen kind of show with Lois Lane. It would be kind of more like Nancy Drew. And so especially since there were other shows that were doing the same thing at that point. So the showrunners have since talked about how they wanted to pair Lois Lane with some young superheroes in Metropolis, which may have actually been part of the project's downfall. Ultimately, we wanted to do too many characters from the DC universe, and the feeling was that it would change the Metropolis mythology, even though this was all pre-Superman. It wasn't really the Superman movie, Superman Returns, at the time that was the problem. It was more because we wanted more characters that they feared would alter the mythology of Metropolis, so that was dead in the water. So it seems Warner Brothers just didn't really like the idea of expanding the mythology and kind of setting it in Metropolis, and especially because Metropolis has been so told with all the Superman films prior to this time. And I guess with Smallville, you know, they got the go-ahead probably because it was in Smallville rather than Metropolis, and so it seems Warner Brothers was a bit hesitant to do it, even though they were the ones to bring it back up, which is just kind of strange. But Warner Brothers' Peter Roth would again approach the producers, though, when the episode Aqua aired, and that ultimately led to the development of the Aquaman series, though of course that wasn't directly tied into Smallville, and Justin Hartley replaced Alan Ritchson in the role. So moving on to the next proposal mentioned above, that would have spun out of the Justice episode and involved Oliver Queen, played by Justin Hartley, and some other young heroes in Metropolis, borrowing a little bit of that Lois Lane idea. You can read obviously Stephen DeKnight's thoughts in this article, and we talked about it in the last week. So yeah, that was the Justice League show that we were talking about previously this week, and at the time he did sound optimistic about doing that spin-off, but unfortunately that never came to be. But let's move on to the next one. So the season 7 episode Siren saw the return of Oliver Queen, and in that episode we also met Diana Lance, aka the Black Canary. Their departure at the end of the episode felt like it was setting up a spin-off, but as far as we know at the time, that wasn't a concern, especially as the episode was written prior to the writer's strike that derailed the TV season. However, a series of events around the Season 8 premiere Odyssey have inspired some still unconfirmed rumours that are worth discussing. For starters, after the CW signed Justin Hartley to a talent deal, and he had done 2 other pilots with the network, Smallville was able to get him back, this time as a series regular for seasons 8 to 10. So season 8 was a period of major change for the show, following the departures of Michael Rosenbaum, as well as some other major actors on the show, so an additional familiar face was nice to see around. So fellow Justice Leaguers Black Canary and Aquaman were also present for that season 8 premiere, and oddly, that was a series of promotional photos that featured the characters. So this is an odd choice in the sense that usually these kinds of photo shoots are only done for series regulars. Also odd that it is these photos that were used for the Smallville season 8 poster, so that means Black Canary and Aquaman were featured on that very poster with the series regulars, including Tom Welling and Erica Durance and Allison Mack. And so that leads us to the first rumor, which is again unconfirmed, but we heard talk that a Justice League mini pilot was actually shot following the filming of the Odyssey episode, using Hartley, Hoffman and Richson, who were already in Vancouver to film. So aside from the photo gallery of obviously Black Canary and Aquaman and their respective actors, we haven't seen any proof that this actually happened, but there was rumors out there. Do note that this may not have had much conflict with George Miller's proposed Justice League movie around the time, which mostly involved other characters, so it wasn't those characters. And so the second thing that Krypton Site points out, which might have some legs, but if it was a series proposal, it was never shot. So as the end of filming for season 8 approached, Tom Welling still had not signed a contract for season 9 and 10. Yes, there was a distinct possibility that Doomsday could have been the end, that is the Doomsday episode, and yes, that would have been awful, but the rumors we were hearing here at Krypton Site at the time was that if Tom was to not sign on, or if his fate was still uncertain, a short Justice League-ish pilot involving the Doomsday Justice League guest stars would have been shot. So that is super interesting to hear, especially if you guys didn't hear this at the time. So yeah, there was that possibility if Tom wasn't going to re-sign, but obviously he ultimately did. Again, because those actors were already in town, so this of course never happened as Tom Welling signed on and Smallville got 2 more seasons to end up at 10. So that's the article, and I agree with Krypton Site and what he was saying. Like, everything kind of led people to believe at the time that they were planning this stuff, they were planning other pilots apart from the Justice League one. Obviously that's the most obvious one, but yeah, it's a bit odd, you know, the inclusion of Aquaman and Black Canary specifically in major posters for the specific season, because you know, they weren't series regulars at that time. So yeah, it's very interesting, and I like the theorizing here, but as he says in the article, it's really nice that people are still talking about Smallville today, and obviously we all remember it fondly in our own different ways. Like some of us, like me, didn't watch it at the time because we were too young, but some people like Craig actually watched it whilst it was happening, and so this is like his Arrowverse pretty much. But for now, let's head on over to another article from Krypton site and Craig once again, and that is because Supergirl and Smallville writers have a new comic book inspired series. Let's break this down as we head towards the end of the video. So Prime Video, which has recently been the home to some of the best comic book inspired series with shows like Invincible and The Boys, which I'm sure many of you guys have watched, is currently casting a live action adaptation of a comic book series called El Gato. And so it's working under the working title El Gato, and the showrunners include veterans from Supergirl and Smallville. So I think this is just a really interesting crossover of the creatives, and it's good to see them working together. And it's specifically, for me, really nice to see Eric Carrasco working on this, because he was a big writer in Supergirl. He had a big presence online, and he wrote a lot of good episodes throughout Supergirl between seasons 2 and 4, and then he eventually served as a story editor on the series, as Krypton site notes, and so he wrote the Justice League vs. the Fatal 5 animated feature as well, and he's a producer for Zack Snyder's upcoming Twilight of the Gods. Eric also briefly worked on one of his earliest jobs on Smallville, so I guess that's kind of the link, and he's done some pretty good stuff since Supergirl as well. And so the other two showrunners of this show, this comic book show, need no introduction. When it comes to Smallville, that is the writers Alfredo Sepetien, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, and Churi Maya, again, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, never said their names out loud before, but they were among the most prolific writers in the show for Smallville, and so they were on the team for 6 seasons with episodes including Vengeance, Labyrinth, Bride, Salvation, Finale Part 1, so yeah, they also directed a couple of episodes specifically, Churi, and then also the two of them returned to the DC Universe with Stargirl on the CW in recent years, so they are very much so steeped in the comic book worlds, and they've been in it for a long time, so it makes sense that all of these people are just coming together and they're making a series together because, you know, why not? And the series is based on the graphic novel, and it's going to star Diego Boneta, maybe some of you guys know the actor, as the main character. The main character is called Frank, who returns home to Mexico after the death of his father and finds himself neck deep in a nest of vipers with his estranged family who are vying for control of his father's business empire. But Frank's grief is interrupted when he learns his only inheritance, a seemingly worthless parcel of land on the border, sits atop the lair of a famous costumed vigilante. His father, El Gato, now Frank, is in the crosshairs. To survive, he will have to solve mysteries decades in the making and unravel the truth about his father's connections to a modern-day terror plot. That sounds like a great show, guys. Like, that is a really interesting premise. And so Eric Carrasco described the show as a pulp thriller, and he says it's also a family drama. It's everything I love about spies and masks and secret identities, which we know all of the showrunners are super interested in. And so a lot of us in the team have been working on this show for a long time now, and it's a genuine thrill to make the show with MGM Television and Prime Video. So there you have it. That is the new El Gato show that they are working on right now with the writers from Supergirl and Smallville. I think you guys are going to be interested in that show. I mean, I'm interested already, and you know, it's about a vigilante. Yes, it's not DC or Marvel or anything, but it seems to be like a really interesting live action adaptation of the comic book series of the same name. So yeah, really looking forward to this. It's probably not going to be called Black Cat, which is the actual translation. That's because obviously we got the Black Cat in Marvel, so yeah, I guess that's just like a rights thing. So right now it's titled El Gato. Be on the lookout for it. It's not going to be out for a while. So if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like and a comment. It would really help this video get out there, but also subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. And for now, you can click on the top right corner of the screen to watch my latest video, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.